Why is it so kind of calm? It's
Yeah, I don't know. I know you have anhedonia, but I've been feeling joy. I can't put my finger on why. It's peaceful joy, peaceful wildness.
I'd normally be angry at that, but I do feel, I don't know, different. Hi there, and welcome to episode 196. Is it? I don't know, of the ADHD Adults podcast. I'm James Brown, basically the podcast equivalent of a histamine reaction, unexpected, uncomfortable, and you'll probably need to lie down afterwards. And I'm joined, as usual, by the man who, like antihistamines, is guaranteed to make you drowsy, unable to operate heavy machinery, Dr. Alex Connor. And sadly, we're not joined for this episode by Mrs. ADHD, who is like an allergic reaction in human form, unpredictable, often rash, and liable to make you swell up with anxiety. She's probably out buying another 25-litre tub of mealworm to feed the birds outside our house. I left the house, Al, the other day, and it looked like a scene from The Birds. There were that many fucking magpies who are now queuing on all our neighbours' roofs to come and feed from a bird feeder she set up. It's madness. Anyway, Alex, hi.
False. There are further generations of antihistamines, some of which do not make you drowsy because of the histamine receptor that they interact with. That's not my hello. I had to. Hello, histamine. No, I mean hi, histamine. Shit.
Yeah. That would describe it. Anyway, how are you? No, not both. Missed that bit. Scroll down. And Alex.
I don't know.
No. And Alex, how are you?
Oh, I'm excellent. Thank you, James. Really good, as always. It's probably the last 3-4 days of ADHD Awareness Month, so that's cured. Done. One of whom has forgotten to write us a letter.
A book?
Yeah, we've written a book, but, and I can't state this enough, your late father has forgotten to write us a letter. So what I'm gonna do is just have a look at a blank piece of paper.
Yeah.
With like Robert from Kidderminster scrawled inexpertly on it, and say, I listened to your last episode, and what was it? Have you got any idea? Oh, limerence.
Yes.
And so many people have contacted me through the medium of a medium and your dad to say that they literally never heard of limerence. Another person said, did you know Geordie LaForge is used as an example of limerence because of a specific episode of Star Trek?
Oh,
and we referenced both of those things accidentally.
We did.
No.
Well, although obviously we went through the Geordie LeCunt avenue to get towards Geordie LaForge, didn't we?
Yeah, total coincidence, though. Sorry about that.
Yeah. You think he's got time? He's got time on his hands down there. You think he'd be able to write a letter and get it to you effectively through whatever delivery system he uses, metaphysically or otherwise?
Yeah, you would. Seeing as time's an illusion down there, you'd think. I know it's disappointing. That's all I'm saying.
It is.
We've had a real letter. Gonna read it out?
No. Yes.
It's from the esteemed Dr. Nathan Gillick, a GP. Have we checked that?
I know him. Yeah.
It says, hi guys, I was just listening to the new episodes of the podcast and I heard when you were asking the question about whether GPs use DSM criteria to diagnose anxiety and depression, I thought I might be able to give a bit of insight. Short answer is yes. GPs mostly do use DSM criteria, but sometimes unknowingly. A lot of GPs may not realize how to subtly differentiate between depression and anxiety in a clinical sense and reactions to life events. And they may not be able to differentiate between depression, anxiety, and mood disorders like various bipolar disorders versus personality disorders versus neurodivergent emotional dysregulation. In brackets, this probably happens often. Typically, the most important things about differentiating these disorders are not necessarily criteria themselves, but the differences in duration, intensity, whether there's causality to the mood. This is what you talk about all the time, isn't it, James? Or emotional shift, and indeed, whether or not it's actually a change in emotion that is temporary or just a persistent mood state, no matter what. once you start looking at it in these terms, I always feel it's relatively simple most of the time to differentiate between these things. But unfortunately, what I see in practice a lot of the time is people saying, oh, well, I'm sad, worried, and then getting an antidepressant, which may or may not be what they need anyway. Really enjoying the podcast, by the way. It's nice to have you guys rattling around the car again between visiting patients, and it's always insightful, even with Alex's questionable contributions. James, you made him put that bit in. I know it.
I didn't. No, I didn't. That was in the second email that came back, and he said in brackets afterwards, you can tell Alex that I said this.
Thanks, Nathan, you bastard. Also, thank you, genuinely.
It's lovely. It's lovely to get correspondence from a GP that for example, and we haven't had this before, but I always worry the world that hasn't said, you're talking shit. Can you stop talking shit? People are coming to see me after listening to your shit podcast.
We get it from my mum.
Things they haven't. Yeah, I get it from your mum. Sorry, Alex.
It was really aggressive.
I know. I'm so sorry.
She listens to this.
Anyway. As is, did you say sorry, Heather?
Yeah,
Helen.
My mother's called Heather.
You call her, but you call her Heather. I know, I remember that, but you call her.
Oh,
Heather.
the hippies, aren't they? Yeah.
Oh, got you. Yeah. And anyway, hi Heather. I'll see you later. As is the new usual.
Doubling down, amazing.
This novelty mug from that twat of an ex that you still drink out of but resent every time of a podcast is still a kind of a tragedy in sort of 3 parts. This bit now, Al. This bit
what we're doing now.
This bit now is part 1, and in part 2, the human embodiment of lift music of science.
Is this part 2 as well?
In part 2,
right? I get confused.
Which is coming, ding.
Yeah. The
human embodiment of lift music of science, Alex the Psycho, Education Monkey,
hello,
will deliver the science behind today's topic, and then we'll give personal reflections, which will be really difficult, I think, in the final part, which inevitably you probably won't listen to. So what are we covering this week, Sam? That's why it's karma.
Of course.
Okay.
I was suffering limerence again.
Okay. This week, we're going to be discussing ADHD and histamine, the annoying chemical that makes us sneeze and itch, but apparently does other stuff too. And that's the end of part 1, which, like Googling, is murder legal? If it's in a dream, you'll regret later. Join us in part 2, where Alex will misquote Darwin in a Utoxeter accident, and James will accident. Oh no, I got it wrong. And James will laugh at his own joke, but obviously nothing else because he's a grumpy cunt.
You sound exactly like when all male Audible readers do a female voice. Bye. So, yeah.
Alex, hi.
Aight. What's up? Hello, Governor. On.
Thank you. Hi there. Welcome. No, it's part 2. Shit, I don't do this bit.
Welcome back to.
Yes. But yes, in part 2, we'll cover the psychoeducation of ADHD and histamine. Alex, go.
To part 196 of episode 2.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. No, it's not, is it?
I always used to struggle with the word histamine because there's histidine, which is an amino acid, and there's histamine, which may or may not be, and is it, and what does it all mean, and why is some drowsy, and why is some dodgy in your stomach? And it's because there's lots of things it does. It's an overreaching, tiny chemical that your body makes and sends all over your brain and whole body for different stuff. It can't just stick to one job. Pretty familiar, I think. And in the brain, it is a neurotransmitter. Outside the brain, it is also that, but it is very famous for its work on the immune system and histamines, especially in allergic reactions and inflammation, which is a whole topic in itself. Inflammation doesn't just mean swelling. Inflammation includes nose, like the reason your nose runs like it's training for a marathon during hay fever season is different histamine receptors trigger inflammation. That's what it is. And each of these histamine receptors has multiple jobs, and they'll do loads of different stuff. In the body isn't wasteful with proteins. So if it's not using histamine for something, and it's got the gene and it knows how to make the protein, it'll over evolutionary time, make another one for something else. And that's how it always works. It's why there's dopamine in the blood, and grifters on the internet say, oh, well, measure your dopamine in the blood. And it's not necessarily relevant to the dopamine in your brain as well. Similar thing. It's a bit like a team of interns who forget what department they're in and are asked to do everything all the time, poorly.
Now, in the script here, it says, ooh, some actual science.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that because I don't feel like there was any. I felt that was like a pitch for the
I said
worst
neurotransmitter.
that's never been delivered.
To be
So, you mentioned receptors. So tell us about them, Al.
I will. I know that this is patronizing. A lot of you know what they are, but almost every drug you ever take or medicine acts on receptors, which are like the locks in cells, and the drug is the key, right? And there are 4 members to the histamine receptor family, probably. Really boring list clacks on, but it's dead relevant to when you go to Boots or Superdrug. Other pharmacies are available with very poor quality meal deals. H1 receptor, the drama queen, this one. H1 receptors pretty much everywhere in your muscles, smooth muscles, blood vessels, nerves, airways, in brain. Classic allergy response receptor. It's behind swelling, ding, itching, ding, redness, ding, and sneezing, double ding. All the other hay fever delight. I like sneezing being a ding. It makes no sense.
But there's got to be someone out there that's their thing. It's 8 billion people. There's got to be at least one person that becomes turgid when they sneeze.
Yeah. H2. That's the second one. That's why they call it that. The stomach overachiever lining of your stomach has H2 receptors predominantly. It's also in your heart and in your smooth muscle in your brain. So there's a lot of overlap. H2, telling your stomach to make more acid. Do you know how some antihistamines you take, it says you take this for heartburn, and you're thinking, well, that's the thing I take for hay fever. That's because this one's commonly targeting the H2 receptor. Part C on the list is H3 receptor, I guess. Brain's thrifty manager hangs out in your, brain, obviously, mostly, but specifically in bits linked to movement, memory, attention, decision-making, pretty familiar. Also a bit in the peripheral nervous system. So that's neurons that aren't in your brain box. It's a bit like a dimmer switch for histamine and other neurotransmitters, including dopamine, familiar. It's key for staying awake, paying attention, regulating inflammation as well, but in the nervous system. And delta, we've got H4 receptor, imaginatively named. Immune systems gossip, I guess, hangs out in immune cells themselves and some organs and some neurons in the brain. And when histamine binds receptor H4, it rallies immune systems to the scene and promotes them to do things like churning out more histamine and promoting inflammation. That's H4.
Right. I think, and by the way, people won't realize that took about 20 minutes to do, didn't it, Al?
Yeah, there was because of technical issues. My beard's grown since I started that.
I'm pretty sure at some point in those 20 minutes you mentioned the word brain a couple of times. So technically, I suppose, what the fuck are we talking about histamine for on an admittedly shit podcast about ADHD? Oh, you cunt.
If you'd have been listening, James, you would have known that histamine in the brain regulates wakefulness, attention, learning, memory. Neurons that produce histamine producing neurons, don't know why they called that. These are active when you're awake, and they go quieter when you are asleep. If your brain histamine levels are out of balance, your sleep-wake cycle might be being disrupted. Insomnia, daytime sleepiness, both of which are known to worsen ADHD symptoms like mood swings, irritability, and focus problems, or Tuesday, as James calls it, also Wednesday and the other days.
Every other day.
You'd also remember, all of the days. You'd also remember from about 3 minutes ago, James, that histamine interacts with other key ADHD neurotransmitters. Too much can throw off dopamine and acetylcholine balance, affecting executive functions, planning, memory, decision-making. H3 receptor, that's a self-regulator of histamine, as well as a control point for other neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, noradrenaline. They're the lisdexamfetamine triggerers. Also acetylcholine as well. That's the parasympathetic one. If anyone wants to go back and listen to when we did the autonomous nervous system bit. So all of those neurotransmitters are vital for attention and mood, and histamine is involved in all of that. Blocking H3 receptors boosts the levels of these chemicals, and that can, depending, improve cognitive processes in rats. That's always the fucking problem, isn't it? This work mostly comes from animal studies. In ADHD-like rats, which sound fucking brilliant, I'm desperately. I think it's like saying in ADHD-like dogs, or dogs as they're known.
Yeah.
H3 blockers improve attention and reduce impulsivity and hyperactivity. So this is driven interest in H3 antagonists, possible ADHD treatment in ADHD humans, or if you're more interested in curing rats. But that human research is very, very early stroke limited. Brain scans have measured histamine receptor levels in other conditions, but never directly, as far as we're aware, in ADHD. Post-mortem studies suggest histamine-related genes link to brain structure differences that you sometimes see in ADHD, not in all of us. But no surprise here, more research needed to connect the dots from animal findings to human beings.
So I'm going to read this next bit out verbatim because, again, it just highlights how I can't write. That interest in H3 antagonist and ADHD. I know it does make sense. Oh, I can write. I can't read. That interest in this is completely
you're being
off the
a bit
cuff.
harsh, James. You can do neither.
So this is completely off the cuff and unscripted, Al. But that's that interest in H3 antagonist and ADHD, is it just interest, or has anyone done actual science?
I wish you could see James's face. I mean, maybe you can. Oh man, I love hurting his feelings. That isn't okay.
Fucking carry on.
A reminder, if you're dead boring, antagonists are blockers. That's what it means. And almost all drugs are antagonists. Very few aren't. One of them that isn't is ADHD meds. Not relevant to this, just dead interesting, I think. So yes, James, there is science on H3 antagonists and ADHD. And the findings were really disappointing. Because the blocking of the H3 receptor in animal studies, promising, not the same magic in human beings. 2 major placebo-controlled studies. Well, one of them, so the molecule snappily titled MK0249, they looked in 72 adults with ADHD, and it was no better than placebo after 4 weeks. Also caused more insomnia than placebo, 32%. Drowsy meds, I guess. And then there's the second trial, separate trial, looking at a drug called Bavicant. I don't know how you pronounce it. Small, non-significant hint of improvement. Non-significant hint of improvement. That's another way scientists use to say "fuck all."
Not but it's also it's another way some scientists used to say, "Here's a paper."
Yeah, please fund a larger grant. That's what that means.
That trending towards significance when the p-value is 0.07. Unbelievable.
We often have to write impact statements when we write grants, and you have to say that is trending towards significant. Yeah, you mean it isn't? The New Scientist had an article the other day that said, why are geologists convinced that they have the answer to how the universe works? Because that's how you get a grant. That's why. So then, higher doses of this Bavicant made people feel, what's the word? Worse. And led to more dropouts in the study.
Is that possible?
No. Yeah. So far, H3 blockers have been brilliant at getting people to pay attention. Not people, sorry. Rats to pay attention. Not humans, unfortunately.
Is that it? Are we done for the science?
No! As we've probably covered before, God knows, don't even check, it's been ages. ADHD can mess with the immune system, doesn't have to. And there, histamine really loves to get involved. ADHD might have links to immune and inflammatory processes, probably does, like allergies, eczema, and hay fever. Might be just correlative statistical, but it could mean that an overactive immune system might be triggering or shaping ADHD symptoms, if not onset. On top of that, histamine is involved in ADHD's symptom twin, Histamine intolerance, HIT. Histamine intolerance happens when your body can't clear the excess histamine properly, often low levels of the enzyme that breaks it down, for example, and the result is that histamine builds up and can cause symptoms that, in fact, look a lot like ADHD, or they make ADHD worse. This overlap, familiar to anybody with perimenopause, CPTSD, and also us as well, probably. Brain fog, inattention, restlessness, hyperactivity, anxiety, irritability, sleep problems. James?
So it smells like ADHD, but are they actually linked, these two things?
Could be.
Mm-hmm.
What's it to you? There's a small study in children and teenagers with ADHD, and 79% of them had genetic variants in the AOC1 gene, which was discovered by that senator or governor that I've forgotten what she is. The AOC1 gene, which makes the enzyme that breaks histamine down, had a genetic variant. So the studies don't show a direct link between that enzyme deficiency and ADHD severity. Some variants were tied to problems with working memory. Genetic links go further too. Some of the genes known to increase risk of developing ADHD are involved in histamine production and breakdown. For example, boring list klaxon, HDC gene. I want to say H to annoy you, but I'm not sure it would.
No, it wouldn't.
Okay. The
HDC
gene.
No, actually, I normally do tell you when something annoys me because I'm fucking gullible, and I normally
really gullible,
let on. Wow.
It's pronounced gullible. HDC makes the enzyme that produces histamine, not breaks it down. And that's been linked to Tourette's syndrome, which shares some traits with ADHD and very often leads to, or is comorbid with, ADHD. And the HNMT gene, which James definitely thinks is the Ninja Turtles gene, breaks down histamine in the brain. Variants can reduce its activity. I just said human Ninja Turtles, didn't I? That's the one thing about them they're not. I think. Are they? Are they a bit human? I don't know.
Teenage human Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. It's when that sensei like banged a turtle. I don't know. I haven't seen it. I haven't read it. I have read it actually. When I was a kid, I bought a book based on the film. I had photos.
Jesus Christ! I did that with Ghostbusters.
That'd be worth a pretty penny now. What the fuck am I talking about?
I don't know.
Jesus. Variants of HNMT, total power, can reduce its activity, contributing to histamine intolerance. For some of us with ADHD, these variants may, and there's a lot of may in this, may mean histamine intolerance plays a role in their symptoms. Should be April, not May. Human Ninja Turtle joke. Finally, thank God, condition. Did you like it?
Really like that.
Why am I saying human Ninja Turtle? Christ no. Fine. I'm tired. We need Sam here.
Yeah.
Finally, thank Christ for this. There is a condition called MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome. Involves the over-release of histamine from, there's a type of immune cell called mast cells, and there is increasing evidence suggesting a link between ADHD and this MCAS. And not causal as far as we're aware yet, but individuals with ADHD may have a higher likelihood of also experiencing MCAS, potentially underlying mechanisms shared, or that they share a coexisting condition, or genetics, or something else. That's the summary. Probably something else.
I'm going to say, because the scientist in me, 8 out of 10, Al.
And the delivery?
Yeah, I mean, a solid 4, maybe. We'll be back in a bit. I don't know. See ya.
No.
Womble's cock.
Womble's cocks.
Welcome back to episode 196 of the ADHD Adults. We're talking about ADHD and histamine today. As always, in part 3, probably, we're doing personal reflections of histamine. James, got any personal reflections of what is a ubiquitous, neurological, and physiological transmitter and hormone?
Yes, I've got thoughts, Al, which I can turn into words, I guess.
Against current evidence.
start with the obvious stuff. Massive allergies as a child. All the peripheral stuff makes sense. I know we've talked about kind of the immune system and inflammation in the past, so that link all makes sense. But I suppose my hastily clipped together personal reflection is this is a really big opportunity to say again, it's not just about dopamine. And the focus, not just from kind of people on Instagram and TikTok, but from healthcare professionals and from healthcare organizations and from scientists as well, is to focus on pretty much on dopamine and to some extent kind of noradrenaline. But there are so many neurotransmitters that are probably involved that there is good evidence. There are other brain types like the astrocyte that are probably involved, but no one's really looking yet. It's not just because we have this difference in dopamine signaling primarily in certain parts of the brain. If histamine, as you said in the psychoeducation, Al, kind of regulates dopamine activity, then it makes sense that it could be involved. And because we've got so few treatments for ADHD, I think it's a shame that so far those few initial trials haven't yet found something that started to have an impact. Because if you could normalize dopamine activity without having to block its reuptake inhibitors or cause a big release of dopamine activity, Alex doesn't really know about kind of phasic and tonic release of neurotransmitters, and I definitely didn't message him on WhatsApp the other day, and he got really annoyed because he'd spent 10 years trying to get me into this as a scientist.
Yes, you would never join in. So
No.
I was a receptibologist for more than 10 years. James would never get involved, and then he's texting me exciting, interesting things that I couldn't get him to listen to me for 30 seconds before.
No, I know.
I am annoyed still.
Yeah, but if you could actually find a different way of treating ADHD that didn't necessarily involve having to either block the neurotransmitter transporters or to cause a release, but kind of to change the regulation of it, that more tonic or kind of slow release of dopamine might be normalized. I think it's really important actually as a topic. We need more research and understanding into how all of these different neurotransmitters interact, not just now as people with a developed brain to help us function, but more importantly in the developing stage of the brain, because we don't yet really understand fully, obviously, how the environment interacts with the genetics that leads to neurodivergence, but understanding more about, well, okay, the genes that are linked, what do they do? Oh, well, this one is involved with histamine. How can histamine in the developing brain, have a role? That's going to help us understand how to earlier maybe identify people with ADHD, so you have fewer people like us wait until they're 350s to get diagnosed with ADHD from Dracula 360. I also think the arousal issue, ding, is interesting because we don't talk enough about inhibitory neurotransmitters, because dopamine and noradrenaline are kind of excitatory, and noradrenaline is largely about kind of alertness or arousal. But GABA, which is the brain's major inhibitory neurotransmitter, plays a massive role in our lack of cognitive inhibition. It's unable to switch off if it's not working, it won't inhibit certain neurons, certain pathways. And histamine could be the same as that. But the kind of the dopamine focus of research, I think, has stopped us from exploring this properly as a scientific community. Because it's probably, if you imagine writing a grant, Al, which you've done in the past, I've read them, they're terrible. If you imagine writing a grant to a funding body, because there aren't many funding bodies that fund fundamentally biological ADHD research, saying, I'd like a lot of money to look at the role of this neurotransmitter for which there's not much evidence in ADHD, you're not going to get the money, are you?
No, and we're not going to look at dopamine.
Yeah, exactly. You're just not. And that's a problem that we have to try and solve, is to try and get more research into the other stuff that's not dopamine. Obviously, I haven't got a tip, because what the fuck could I give as a tip for this? So, have you got any thoughts, Al?
Yeah, same thing, really. Do you know what my tip is? Is to try and think critically, and that sounds really patronising, but what PhD, the only thing it did for me, really, apart from realise that I was bored shitless by lab work, was to take myself out of the equation, to take my narcissism out, and have a lot of that, so I have to do it a lot. If I think, oh, I know it's histamine because I've read these papers, and I start to build that belief system. It's not true. I want to think that narcissistically because everybody else is saying dopamine. If I've already hitched my wagon to dopamine, I'm rejecting the evidence in my eyes about histamine. Both of those things are not solid critical thinking. Normalizing using words like might be, don't know, wait to see, cleverer people than me will let me know is really, really important. And it lends to a certain narcissistic smugness to go there. And it's a really healthier way of dealing with things. So if you either way, you know, let's not hitch wagons to any of them really, and just keep looking and saying and saying this is what the science is hinting towards and moving towards. I also and still do have loads of allergies and eczema, and the link between that and an ADHD seems really, really strong. I'd love to know if there's a collagen angle to both of those things, but obviously can't do any personal tips about histamine.
Pardon me. The one thing I did want to mention, actually, because I think I may have mentioned this before on a podcast, and it may have been the inflammation episode, but I had this really weird week, and in the space of, I think it was 2 days, I heard from 4 people with ADHD that had mast cell activation syndrome, MCAS.
Oh, that's weird.
And again, it causes a lot of or exacerbates a lot of the symptoms of brain fog.
Amazing.
Yeah, brain fog.
Is that a clinical term?
Yes, I'll just stop there, shall I? Anyway, I think MCAS is probably more common than people think. And when you look in these populations, you always find more ADHD people than in, you know, the general population.
Well, bearing in mind, it's a spectrum, and you have to hit a certain level to get ADHD. Anything that will exacerbate ADHD symptoms will push people into the diagnostic arena.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Give me credit, haven't I?
Look at your face. You look devastated.
I know. Anyway, before we go, have you got time for a game, Al?
Let me just have a look. No! Bullshit.
Okay. So, I'm winning, I think, 2-1 so far this series, I think, but I'm not sure. And this is a game. Again, it's about my mum, who, just to remind you, this is a joke because people have mentioned this to me when I say selfishly went blind, age 91. But I was trying to 3D print for her a little container because the NHS has very helpfully given her 5 different sets of eye drops, all in exactly the same pipette, same size, same shape pipette.
For blindness.
And she's blind. So obviously it makes it really easy for her to be independent and apply her own eye drops, which is challenging enough when you can't see where your eyes are, if that makes sense. And then you give her 5 different drops, which are to be given 1 once a day, 1 twice a day, 1 4 times a day, 1 3 times a day, and 1, I think,
is that the quiz?
Twice a day. It's not, no. But I was trying to work with her to help her keep her independent. So I said, well, if I 3D printed a container which had like little bumps on the top, you'd know if that's the once a day, if that one's the twice a day, if that one's 3 times a day. Exactly. And obviously it went wrong. So what went wrong, because I wasn't really paying attention, did I not notice that the 3D printer had stopped and got clogged, and I've now got a broken 3D printer? That's option A, let's call it. Option 2, we'll call it, did I, instead of printing this kind of container, just print solid blocks of plastic, I suppose it is, and because I didn't check beforehand, was it like a container with a hollowed out chamber? I don't know. Or option 3, did I break it by using the wrong filament, the one that's meant to be used for supporting and not printing? So did I not notice it stopped and it's broken? Did I just print solid blocks of plastic, or did I break it by using the wrong type of filament?
I don't think it's clogged because you're an expert on unclogging things. I don't think it's solid blocks because you always 3D printed your coffin, so it's the wrong filament.
Yeah, you're wrong. It's solid blocks of plastic.
I didn't check it.
I took ages lining them up, and then Al, even as it was printing, and I was checking, going, it's filling that in a lot, you know. Not sure when it's going to put the gap
I've made
in.
No hole. Did you put hinges on the lid?
It was a downloaded file from a website with free things, and I searched for container, but somehow when it went on there, it went from being a container to literally a solid block that used up 80 grams of Plastic. Anyway, that's 3-1 to me as usual. You're doing really badly, which
This game
gives me something, even if it's not pleasure. That's it for this episode, the last episode in ADHD Awareness Month 2025. Is that this year? Cured. If interested, you can find our website at the ADHDadults.uk. You can send in topics and letters. You can find our Patreon. We did a book, ADHD Unpacked. You can probably still buy that when this comes out on audiobook for 69% off until the day after this comes out, if you're interested. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye all.
Trigger warning, klaxon. Klaxon, 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 big klaxon. No. Trigger warning, klaxon. Klaxon, klaxon.